The learning goal of this topic is to understand and distinguish approaches to building morphological lexicons. The traditional dictionaries in many inflectional languages, even those available in the electronic format, usually give certain inflectional forms as indicators of inflectional classes, or they show the whole inflectional form in the case of the sound change. But remaining inflectional forms are rarely shown in the dictionaries, although some of these can be unpredictable or hard to disambiguate. The dictionaries cover a large vocabulary, but they only give information on a part of the inflectional forms needed to complete paradigms. The grammatical descriptions in grammar books, on the other hand, show full paradigms of only selected examples to give a survey of the system. All inflectional descriptions share the same characteristics. They present a set of generalized inflectional classes, mentioning exceptions at times. The grammar books, therefore, do not represent a good source for individual words, apart from a few selected examples. So, the lack of information in the two types of sources is as follows. Dictionaries give partial information on quite a large vocabulary, but the grammatical descriptions give exhaustive information on only a part of the vocabulary. Therefore, the purpose of morphological lexicons is usually twofold. They are created to produce data for use in language technology projects, such as search engines, part-of-speech tagging, context-sensitive correction, in language teaching, and lexicography. And also, they are created to make the resulting paradigms available to the general public. We can think of two approaches in the generation of morphological lexicons. One is to produce a full paradigm for as large a proportion of the vocabulary as possible, and the other is to produce a rule system for the generation of inflection by inflectional classes. For some languages, such as Icelandic, described in the paper by Bjarnadóttir titled The Database of Modern Icelandic Inflection, in spite of centuries of research on morphology, the necessary data for a productive rule system was simply not available. The problem is that for analysis it may be acceptable to use an over-generating rule system, but for production it is not, if the end result, in other words a text, is expected to be correct. And it is expected to be correct since data from the lexicon is used for other natural language processing tasks, such as context-sensitive grammar correction, and the paradigms are also widely used online by the general public for reference. So, the first approach is to produce a full paradigm for as large a proportion of the vocabulary as possible. The first example for this approach is a database of modern Icelandic inflection, a collection of 2,700 paradigms with about 5.8 million inflectional forms, in other words, word forms with grammatical tags. The record for each word in the database contains all variants of the stem and information on which parts of the full paradigm are applicable in each case. For instance, no singular for pluralia tantum, no past participles for some verbs, etc. These records are merged with a matrix for the appropriate inflectional class, and the resulting inflectional forms are then stored with morphosyntactic tags according to their place in the matrix. The second example is the Portuguese Mordebe database with a size of about 125,000 lemmas, with around 1.5 million inflected forms, which are stored explicitly rather than being rule-based generated. Mordebe consists of little but two related tables, one listing all the lemmas, the other the list of all inflected forms for each lemma. The data are stored in a simple MySQL database format. The link between the two tables is implicit. Every lemma is given a unique identifier, and every inflectional form relates to one of the records in the lemma table. And the second approach defines the following task of a morphological dictionary to model the rules that govern the internal structure of words in a language. For example, speakers of English realize that the words dog and dogs are related, that dogs is to dog as cats is to cat. The rules understood by the speaker reflect specific patterns and regularities in the way in which words are formed from smaller units and how those smaller units interact. A Pertium lexicon is the only freely available morphological lexicon for some of the Slavic languages such as Bosnian, Croatian or Serbian that contains both definitions of paradigms as well as lexemes attached to these paradigms. A Pertium contains a morphological analyzer which segments the text in surface forms, words, and delivers for each surface form one or more lexical forms consisting of lemma, lexical category, and morphological inflection information. It reads a finite state transducer generated from a source language morphological dictionary in XML. And here, finally, you have the references describing the approaches to building morphological lexicons we just described in this video.